Alright, in this video I'll be covering the last of what I consider the basic features of Silmaril, and that is Geomancy. So my Geomancer is Morwen, my assisted player will be Turin, and then I have Yavanna there as an entrust target. So jumping right to it, in the Geomancy config section, the first thing you're going to do is, enable your Luopan and specify your assist target. Now, on a buff, you don't need to specify a target. It will default to the Geomancer if none is specified, but you have to have one if it's a debuff because that's how you determine what target, what enemy to cast it on. There is an option that says only when engaged. This is only for buffs, like I mentioned, because you have to be engaged for debuffs, but you don't have to be engaged for a buff. This is for things like ambuscade. When you start off, you might not necessarily want to cast your Geo Fury, especially if you're using job abilities on it at the start, right? So you want to wait until you actually engage a mob to pop your, EA, dematerialize, and all the job abilities along with it, and place it in the correct spot. So, pretty straightforward though. Indie, not much to talk about there. As for Entrust, like I mentioned earlier, my assisted character is Turin, but the player in which she's going to cast Indie Baryon will be Yavanna, right? And then I have this checked to only cast when engaged. Again, with a 4-minute, 4.5-minute, whatever, Entrust. If you're buffing and doing your rolling and putting your songs on, you might you might burn half of your Entrust right there before you even fight the enemy. So that's pretty much about it, right? I mean, on the Geomancy screen, not much. A lot of the other configuration will happen on this screen. Where you can specify whether you have last emanation or ecliptic attrition, and configure thresholds, right? So in this case, I'm only going to use these job abilities when Blaze of Glory is active because, I feel they work, I think, better when they stack. Because most of the time when you're doing content, like for instance, Ambuscade, a goal boss or something, you're going to want to have those stacked because otherwise, you can just random deal or, during a big fight. I will cover a little bit more about this full circle that will throw players off, but I'll show you what it looks like just on a simple engagement. With melees. When I start the player, it's got a couple other stuff. So you have your enhancing in there too. So I'll just get her warmed up here. So there's her wilt. It's obviously pretty high priority above my enhancing high priority, which was re-raise. And then it's working its way down to normal priorities. Once it finishes with the low priority, I'll engage so you can clearly see the job abilities and how the Lu upon deployment works. So I don't need that anymore. So I'm going to go over a tour in here. Oh. And I'm going to do it on this numbing blossom. It's kind of nice because they don't move around. I better make sure I'm within 20-some yums. All right, so I'm going to engage and tab over to Morwen so we can watch her and how she deploys her Luopons. First thing she's going to do, I have Blaze of Glory set. You have to use that before you cast a Luopon. I have it, Ecliptic Attrition is only used when you're Blaze of Glory, so that's why it fired. Also, I dematerialize, right? And then, of course, she went ahead and entrusted the barrier. And then the combat script, which is died too, so she tagged it with hate. So now you got a mini bolster Luopon on that Numbing Blossom right now. Excuse me. Okay, so that's relatively straightforward. Basically, enable all your job abilities. Like I said, this is all Blaze of Glory. I enable Blaze of Glory. Um, you can set this a little bit higher, but it doesn't really matter. That's basically to ensure you're not putting this EA Ecliptic Attrition on like almost a dead Luopan, right? That would be a waste of I think it's like a 10-minute job ability. Looks like a 5-minute job ability. So, okay. So now the tricky part. This is what usually throws someone off. So in this instance, Turin is not engaging. So if it was a Corsair and you're doing True Flight, Wildfire, Lead and Salute, and you're backlining it with a tank up there, but your Geomancer doesn't want to eat the stuff, but you still want your melees on the target. Well, what you're going to have to do is this assist distance will have to be large, because what will happen by default, it's set for like 6 yalms. She's going to full circle that, cast it, and then she'll full circle it again because the assisted target, Turin, is not within 6 yalms of this Luopan, right? Now, if I move Turin within 6 yalms, she's not going to full circle it, right? So the assist distance corresponds to the assist specified here. And that is not from the enemy, but that is from the Luopan to the assisted target, the player. This is so that if an enemy moves or you change enemies and you move a couple yalms, if you're no longer within the specified distance on Luopan, that Geomancer is going to full circle and cast it on the next enemy closer. So it's a way to make sure that you can always keep your Luopan close enough that you can put your enemy next to your Luopan. So that's an important thing to get, because sometimes people just leave this as 6 yalms. I think it defaults there. And then they're saying, oh, my Geomancer keeps cycling Luopans. Well, it's more than likely your assisted player is too far away. So you can just bump that up to whatever. All right, so that's the assisted, but there's also this player distance. It's just as it seems. The player distance is just strictly your Geomancer to your Luopan, right? I'm just going to move it here so you can see the distance. Okay, so this is 21 yalms. I'm at 19, right? So if I go to 21, 23, she's going to despawn it, right? You can bump this up to a little bit more because cast range is about 21 or so yalms. But why have that? Well, when you're mobile, like in Dynamis, Sortie, Odyssey, really Omen, a lot of the content, you're going to find an enemy, you deploy a Luopan, and then you move on. Well, then you stop and you engage the next enemy. But then if you have to full circle a current Luopan, you deploy it a lot slower. Plus, you get your recovery back, a little MP, instead of just letting it, hit points dwindle down doing nothing. So it's a way that as long as you're moving around, you'll have it available immediately. As this example, like now when Turin engages, I don't have to do a full circle. I can immediately just deploy a... Oh, she must be too far away. I guess Luopans are 20 yalms. But you get the idea of how despawning your Luopan makes it quicker to deploy later. Let's see here. That's really about it, to be honest. It's not too bad. I went over the tough stuff, especially this. Understanding this is key. And, the Voidance, of course. Make sure you have Geo Voidance. It's the default spell. There's a reason for that. It's It's not a debuff, so you don't have to have an enemy to cast it, and it's one of the lower MP ones. So it's the most economical and easiest way to do Radio Arcana. Um, bolster, of course, if you want it. But aside from that, it's not too bad. There was a couple tweaks I made to this. Um, yeah. If you have any questions, comments, go ahead and just drop it in the Discord. Thanks.